So let's get started here. The purpose of this first one is to leverage your data analysis to strategize and monitor asset performance, and the second one, of course, will be the planning and scheduling, as we said. Now, all of you on this call have some type of asset management approach, and you're utilizing this approach through operations, engineering, maintenance, and reliability. And you've invested in some great systems. You're investing in processes. We're talking about systems like Maximo or SCADA or HMI or other systems. You're scheduling. You have people that you utilize, and you're getting some great results. And you're doing the things that you're generally doing. And typical challenges everyone faces is, how do I identify underperforming assets? What are my aging assets across my facilities? What assets need to be replaced from life cycle repair versus replace perspective? And what's the performance and of my assets, and how does that performance tie to my strategic goals and visions? So those are the typical challenges, and as we move to the now, we talk about systems, people, and processes. But let's add a fourth component, and that component is analytics, right? So how do you take advantage of all of these three and drive better performance? So if you, including data analysis, analytics, and data transformation, now you can go from some good results to great results. And that's really where we want to focus is, how do we leverage data? And how do we leverage this information that you're collecting every day, or you're trying to collect every day? How do we take advantage of the good data? How do we take advantage of your bad data to make better decisions? And when I talked about those typical challenges earlier, we're going to kind of highlight that. So I got a couple of questions as I'm going through this webinar. If you had to rate the quality of your CMMS data and the accuracy, where do you think you would be? So take a second and click on one of these check boxes. It kind of gives us an idea. And then another question is what type of reporting tools are you currently using? So which reporting tools do you currently use? Are you using, Actuate, BERT, Crystal, Cognos? And how are you visualizing the data in your systems? All right, so I said, what are the typical challenges? And we talked about those typical challenges initially. And as we look into this, to the left side of my screen, I kind of highlighted these are typical challenges. To the right, you'll see how data can solve these challenges. So, you can use the systems, you can use the processes, you can use the people, but the only way you can solve some of these challenges through a data perspective and analysis, right? So if you want to identify underperforming assets, without data, you're not able to do that. So you can use the data to rank the assets by utilization. You could do time to repair, time to failure. If you want to monitor asset performance based on processes, you could start doing analysis from a creative perspective, monitoring failures, identifying aging assets with information, and understanding what costs you're spending with these assets. So data plays a very important role in your analysis, in your strategies. And so now, if we continue here, let's look at it from a failure analysis perspective, right? So drilling down a little bit further, we talked about challenges at a high level. Now we're talking about challenges at a little bit, unique failure analysis level. So if we want to understand certain things and certain problems of our equipment, again, how do we use the data and leverage the data to help with those challenges? So in this presentation, I'm actually going to also walk you through some examples. So I'm kind of painting a stage here. So we're kind of looking at, what are the typical challenges? What are the objectives? and then how does data solve those problems? Now, if we're taking an approach of utilizing analytics or data and metrics to improve our performance, we start with the goal and objective, and then in this case, why analysis on performance. So if we're going to say, okay, our goal is to improve reliability, and then let's mix that up. Well, mean time to repair, mean time between failure. Well, what impacts mean time to repair? Well, improving labor skills, improving availability. Well, what impacts that? Well, and then you can drill. So creating a strategy map and aligning your business objectives and throughout your stakeholders, whether you're aligning your objectives to the, what metrics do and key performance indicators do your techs need? What metrics do supervisors need? And you move that up. So if everybody has kind of understanding how they're being measured and what their actions are, then you can, your goal is your lagging indicator, and your actions are your immediate goals are your leading indicators. So you're using the data not only to make decisions with it, but you're also using the data to drive action down at the mechanic level, at the supervisor level. So here's where I'm going to jump out and walk you through some examples. This particular section is about asset performance management. So there's multiple areas around asset performance management. There's work management, there's analysis and optimization strategy, and so as you're trying to drive better metrics, so maybe my goal is to improve my reliability program implementation, right? So okay, with data I can look at maintenance excellence by class and asset. So pulling up this example here, sorry, my internet here. All right, I'm just going to pull another one. Let me just kind of start at a plant manager dashboard. Okay, got it. So let's just kind of talk about, what I talked I was talking a little bit earlier about the asset performance and how data can help me kind of identify the area. So in this example, what you see in the plant manager dashboard, I need to look at. I'm looking at some different types of information here. I'm going to try to understand, what's my target versus my actual production. And then I want to, and my quality, and then I want to start drilling into see how is maintenance affecting me, what's maintenance costing me, and where's the opportunities from a maintenance perspective. If I go back to some of my areas of analytics, you can see that there's different areas that I can utilize the data to help me identify opportunities. So, for instance, if I want to look at my top 10 assets based on cost or work order, creation. Now, let's kind of take a step back. So what we're talking about here is we're looking at a way to view data and use the data, how to make better decisions. So if we're looking at this, these reports here, and we're saying, okay, some of this data can't help me. I don't have this data, right? So the first question will be, Johnny, I don't have this data to be able to make these decisions. So then you say, okay, what kind of analytics can I do with some of the data that I have now, and then how can I drive better quality data by using through these types of metrics. So in the example where I showed you, if I pull up a dashboard like this, right? Well, let's look at the top left, open work order account. Well, that's one I know I have, right? Backlog work order account, that's another one I know I have. So at least, the data might not be very good inside the Maximo or whatever system you're utilizing, but at least I have an understanding of what do I have out there that's available. And then I can start driving better decisions, and I might be in the red at all these areas, work compliance, labor accountability, OE, and maintenance costs, but at least I have an understanding or visualization of where am I. And then from there, I can start driving and making better decisions, and then I can start driving, in order for me to achieve, and we're going to talk about that in the second session here, the work order compliance, the work management. In order for me to drive these metrics to improve, I need to get better quality data. Well, in order to get better quality data, I need to instill some processes inside of my CMMS that will drive these. So it's a twofold situation. Either what am I measuring, and then how do I get there to what I'm measuring? So as you look at this example here, you can say, maybe, this kind of gives me a pretty clear picture of where I need to be and how I can get there. So it's like a map and a journey. And underneath, you can probably see some ways you can, if I wanted to click and see it yearly, I want to look at it monthly, I want to look at it weekly or daily. So create kind of an interactive approach and get an understanding of where we're at and where we're driving. So if I move back and I can look at some other areas where look at some other kind of metrics that can help me drive some improvements where I want to see, so I got what's my downtime reasons out there, and then what's my trend, and how are things tracking across time, and start using this information to drive better asset performance. To again, if I go back to my original presentation, is all right. As we were talking about these examples, what are my underperforming assets? Well, how do I know that? Well, again, I'm going to go into my data. I'm going to start doing some analysis, and I'm going to start saying, okay, how many work orders were created on these assets? How much cost is put on here? And then start driving that. It might not be able to do time to repair. It might not be able to do time between failures, but I'm at least getting an understanding and seeing some things from a perspective of the information that I currently have. And then I can start driving that to a better decision. So the last component of this presentation is, all right, so that all sounds good. Like you're right. This is what data can solve. How do we use bad data to get some metrics now, and how do we get our data better? Well, it's an incremental approach. It's so if you kind of look at it, you can't get from being able to take your data from bad to great unless it's a journey. So you have to start with your asset hierarchies. You have to start with your asset. You got to get at least your information in, clean up your hierarchies, get your assets, identify them, get all your items inside, and then from there you can start managing. You can start putting your workflow processes, planning or scheduling. You can start doing job plans, and then finally, as you drive up this journey, so the data goes to a maturity level, just like your maintenance program does. So your data will go through a journey of look, we got to start with the basics. The basics is getting in our assets, identifying our assets, and cleaning that up, and making it easy for our techs and people within the organization to be able to quickly go find where they're at and what and create the notification. And from there, they can go to the next level where now, okay, we got that. Now we want to be able to do better processes. And finally, we get to the overall objective of our maturity level, where we're using the data to make it's kind of like a data-driven maintenance and reliability program. And the journey starts, you kind of look at your performance of your asset management system, and you look at your overall goals and strategy, and you map that to your systems, your data quality, your data governance. You can kind of go, you can see that with data as the fourth component of that, the three-wheel process I showed you earlier. You got systems, you got processes, and you have people, and now you add analytics. You can finally start using it to drive asset value realization. And as you can see, and most of you probably have seen some of these areas of improvement. If you take, for instance, asset systems, you've got some partial data, you've got different data that's not aligned. And you want to move, you're moving it to where you get it integrated, and all of a sudden you have mature data, and you can start having the data to help you with your reliability decisions. So this is a 20-minute presentation, and we want to leave a couple of minutes for any questions, and then we will kick off the work management session.
Hey, thank you, Johnny. I'll request all the attendees to send the questions on the chat window, and we will answer to them. Hey, Johnny, we have one question here.
Okay, now
hello. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the attendees, the question, is this a software, or how is it? Is it a license-based software?
Well, actually, those reports that I was demonstrating were built in Cognos. It wasn't a software solution. This particular customer had used Maximo, had Cognos for their reporting tool, and they had just had a problem getting the data out and understanding, or even trying to understand what to do with the data. So they utilized our services to help them create that strategy and the metrics that we were demonstrating. So no, it's not software, it's just implemented within their IT infrastructure.
All right. Hey, Johnny, we can start with this next session.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to switch.
Hey, Johnny, there is one question before we start.
Yeah?
Is the data behind these reports only from CMMS or other sources also?
No, they come from numerous sources. As you can see, if I'm going to compare maintenance with reliability, maintenance with operations, all that data does not come from Maximo or any other CMMS. It comes in from other sources. So, but we're using Cognos or Business Objects or ClickView or whatever reporting tool is to kind of bring that data together and make better decisions with it.
All right. Thank you.
All right. So, if there's no other questions, this kind of has, so I'm not, if some of you are dropping off, or if you're not dropping off and you're watching, this is the same similar path as before, right? You, as I talked earlier, you've got processes, you've got systems, you have people, and those, you know, you've invested. And the point here is, and you know, if I wasn't clear the first time, it was that you invested in these three, and how are you taking advantage of it, right? So how are you using data to make better decisions? So, you know, we talked about the typical challenges, and you know, about your assets, and then your infrastructure and your capital investment decisions. And the fourth component we're adding to this is analytics. So by taking that fourth wheel, we can take advantage of all this investment we have. And we don't need to go and invest anymore. Let's just take advantage of what we have, right? What we've bought, what we have, and how do we leverage that to make better decisions? And that can transform, you know, that takes you from great results to what we want to call world-class results. And we asked this question earlier, and most of you are probably still on the phone, so we don't have to go through the poll again. But again, as we said about how does only data can be used to analyze these problems. Now, I'm not saying it has to be a ton of data, but data. Without data, you can't find out what are your underperforming assets. So you got to go, you look at the number of work and cost and things that were done across work orders. Without data, you know, you can't identify what equipment needs to be replaced if you don't truly understand, you know, the information of the age of your assets, and how much you spent, and how much you spent the last year maintaining it. If you bought a centrifuge, you know, for $900,000 10 years ago, but you're spending $200,000 a year to maintain it, you know, if you don't know that, you can't make decisions with that information. And so let's look at this from a perspective of work management, because this is what this session's about. So here's some typical work management problems. You want to monitor proactive versus reactive work, right? You want to understand the work order volume, cost, time, and material. You want to understand work efficiency, and you want to monitor problem work orders. With data, you have the ability to find, for the first one, you can look at the correlation between what was spent on PMs, time spent on PM versus corrective work. Or if I'm looking at it from a time and material perspective, you know, I can look at the volume, and so on as you kind of go down the right, you know, from how data can be leveraged to solve some of these work management problems. Same can be said from a planning and scheduling perspective. So this is a perfect example. I was in a discussion yesterday, and they were trying to understand, you know, what work we have out there in the system. What's the bucket of work orders? You know, what's open? What haven't we touched? What haven't we closed? So, you know, how do we know, you know, what's out there? And unless you can use the information to kind of bring it visually and show it, you can't act on it. So in these examples, you'll see from planning and scheduling, you know, how do I monitor my planning compliance, my scheduling compliance? How do I leverage data to do that? And again, these are some analytic type solutions you can use. So what's typical waste in maintenance? You look at from a labor productivity standpoint, there's, you know, people trying to plan to work themselves, they're waiting for instructions, they're looking for supervisors. You know, how many times you print a work order and a mechanic will walk through the equipment without everything that they need, come back, get the tools, go back, get the parts. So all that time is being wasted, you know, or maybe waiting for somebody to approve the work order, or, you know, there's different reasons from a labor standpoint. And the same can be said from a material standpoint. You know, are the parts there? Are they in the storeroom? Do I have to travel to get them? How long does it take me from a requisition to a purchase order? And what's the time lost due to, other things you see here? So let's look at it kind of when I did the asset performance session, you saw kind of a hierarchy where I focused on asset performance and maintenance and reliability and the leading and lagging indicators. Same thing can be built in the work management and planning and scheduling. So we want to account for 100% of our labor. That's our objective, right? Count 100% of our labor. Well, so we have 2,080 hours. Now we can break it down by unavailable time and then available time. So then let's just say 15% unavailable, which is holidays, vacation, sick time. And then if you look to the right, you can say what's available time. And so then you break it down to work and non-work time, and then you drive it down. So how are you gathering this information today, and how can you analyze the data that, so you can make decisions with it around accounting 100% of the labor within a work environment. So we'll look at some examples. The keys to work management and the keys to planning and scheduling is identifying the work, planning the work, scheduling the work, executing the work, completing it, and then analyzing it to make sure that what can we do better through this process. So we get back out and go to our examples. So the first question you might have is, well, let me kind of understand from a identification standpoint, right? Let me understand the work management. So let me understand where's the bucket of work orders. What is it what's out there? So in this example, what you'll see is this gives me a great view of my work orders to the left by status that are out there, and then per priority, and then I can see how many of them are greater than 90 days old, less than 6 days. What's important to see here is a couple things. One is, if you look at the in progress work orders, you will see that you have 717 of them that are estimated labor hours 0. So how can a work order be in progress with 0 estimated hours? So, and then to the right, I can see, I can look and see, okay, well, I've got 22 that are greater than 90 days. So what I might want to do here is double-click on that 22, go to the work order list, double-click on that, and drive down to see what those work orders are. Maybe hand these out, email these out to the individual areas so they can take action. But what's important about this is the data may not be that great, but at least I do know what I have out there, what's just out there. Just give me an idea of what is out there, okay? And then now, if we want to get to start looking at our labor from a planning and scheduling perspective, I can start getting an understanding of my availability for my people in the field and my crews. So in this example, zoom in a little bit, I can see by different employee types, different sites. I can click on the site and I can see, what are my, I can see basically from the targets I set, backlog, crew weeks, how many, what's past due, what's current, and then, how am I trending? So again, I'm utilizing the data make better decisions. So I kind of go down here and look at my schedule compliance. We talk about work identification, we talk about planning and scheduling, we talk about compliance. As this pulls up, so once I get an understanding of where my data, where my what's my backlog and what's my bucket of work orders, now I got to understand, okay, what time do I have available, and that's where I was looking kind of at my crew and see what what's the availability of my crew, and so we'll look at the schedule compliance, for instance. We talked about, okay, by site, right? I want to see, what's out there and how compliant from a scheduling, we're doing from completion to different statuses, and we can see that we can kind of start seeing a trend of how we're doing. If we look at labor accountability, we talked about that one place where we said, okay, 100% of the time needs to be accountable, and are we accounting for 100% of that work? And but if we're not, where are the areas of opportunity? So, we looked at a couple of different places. We looked at, well, actually, pull that one back up. So if we want to get a handle of the available time, the work time and the not work time, especially the work time, we need to start capturing this information in the work order. So we do need to understand how much travel, how much time we spend out there traveling, how much time we spend out there gathering parts, and et cetera. So we go back to our accountability here. We can say, okay, we want to have accountability of greater than 95%. And then we can see by site now what's our labor accountability. And we can see what's our work order accountability. And of course, we can see what's our overtime percentage. Again, this is, if we're going to drive red to green without understanding it, without knowing it, you can't, there's no real easy way to do it. So the one other thing I would add to this is, as I know we're reaching our time here, is, when you look at the question you could have is, well, Johnny, this felt good, but we still just got to get the work order created. So one of the things that you could do is use data to drive better work order compliance. And the way to do that is to, I go back one here, is maybe create a way you can monitor the work order technician. So in this case, what you see is the work order quality. You can see by asset. These are the fields that we said, okay, these are the fields we're going to monitor for this particular work orders, and we want to see what is the overall quality of those particular work orders. So, are they entering their assets to a functional location versus an asset? Are they putting their priority codes? Are they putting in the target end dates? Are they putting in their failure codes? And what we're doing is using analytics to drive better data quality, which in return will start getting you to the final component of this presentation, is how do we use the data? So in this case, we do know we have our hierarchies, we do have our location, we just can't get people to create the work orders. So how do we drive better work order data? Well, we're using the metrics to tell us the quality of it. And another thing we did that in this situation is to also reduce the the number of fields on the work order so we can make it a lot easier for the technicians to enter the data. So as we talked about the previous presentation, which you saw, this is a journey, and the journey starts, just like your maturity of your maintenance program. The same thing happens to the journey of your information. So as you move from reactive to reliability-based, or we call it analytics-driven asset value, or analytics-driven maintenance. So at this point, I know I'm close to my 20 minutes, so Nilesh, I'll see if there's any other questions. I know the team that has been on, everybody on this call has been on for the whole 40 minutes. So.
Hey, sure. Thank you, Johnny. We have a couple of questions here from the attendees. One of the question is, the term asset can be used in a broader sense. How have you used this data analytics process to specifically analyze the people and or process category you spoke of?
So repeat that one more time.
Yeah, the term asset can be used in a broader sense. How have you used this data analytics process to specifically analyze people and process category you spoke of?
Okay, yeah. So that's a great question. So there was a situation where we used the data to kind of, we call it an employee engagement portal, where we monitored how much. So in a portal, we used how many work orders were created, how many hours were booked on work orders, how many hours were spent in meetings, how many hours were spent in training, and the objective was the goal was we needed to do training was key to the success of the program. So we monitored, we used the data, and we captured all this through work orders and said, okay, were you in the daily maintenance meeting or the weekly maintenance meeting? Were you active? Yes. Did you? Yes, I did. I was there for an hour. Did you participate? So all that data was used to get employee engagement. So if you look at the spiral that I talked about earlier, if you kind of add maturity going up and user adoption, the only way you can get user adoption is through giving them the information that they need. So if you can monitor the performance of the employees, it's just the same as monitoring the performance of an asset.
Thank you, Johnny. There is one more question. How would you measure the quality of plant data such as job task?
That's very good. I think. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So how would I measure the quality of the data, such as job plans? That was the question.
Right.
Yeah. So actually, I think we have one more webinar next week around that. But yeah, it's key. There's what you can do is you can kind of start looking at the quality. Start analyzing the data. Actually, I will pull up an example here. Just pull it up. That's a very good question, actually. If you look at sorry, open up the wrong one. Okay, if you look at this, I apologize. I had it. Well, what I was going to demonstrate is, and I'll have to, if whoever asked that question can email Nilesh an email, I can send it to you.
Sure.
What we did is we looked at the PMs and analyzed all the PMs and job plans out there and the efficiency. So we were trying to look at it from a data analytics perspective. We looked at how many PMs were created and how efficient were those PMs. So we started using the data to judge, okay, were we over PMing the equipment? Were we under PMing the equipment? How much labor was used on certain PMs versus other PMs, or certain job plans versus other job plans? So we used a lot of the analytics to help us look at the efficiency of the PM program. Everybody, there's when you try to optimize your PM program, you always look at your control strategies. But the data can help drive a lot of information. The data can help you look at the efficiencies and help you look at the areas where you're focusing. You might, maybe, even if you're doing PMs, you're still seeing a lot of failures, right? So there's different ways to use the data to drive it. And like I said, if you send Alicia an email, I can send you that example of what we did.
Sure, Johnny. Hey, Johnny, one last question. How have you used traditional maintenance data to assess PM effectiveness?
Say that again?
Yeah, how have you used traditional maintenance data to assess PM effectiveness?
Traditional or conditional?
Traditional.
Traditional.
Yeah.
So yeah, that kind of goes back to the job plan question. So, we're using, you take the information and you say, okay, let's look at the data. If we're doing PMs and we're issuing parts and labor on these PMs, we can analyze the PM, we can analyze the cost of the PM, and then we can correlate the failures of that, for that piece of equipment. So we look at the PM information and the cost, and then we look at and then we overlay it on top of the type of failures, and then we want to see patterns. If we're doing a great PM or predictive program, we should have less failures, or maybe we are introducing a lot of failures with the PM program sometimes. So we take the data and again, it's the same thing like the question with the job plan. I can send that example. I can show you some ways we've optimized PMs using data.
Hey, thank you very much, Johnny. There are a couple of more questions, but we are running out of time. We will try to answer those questions through emails. Thank you very much for the time. Thank you very much, everyone, for your while here, and we hope this session was an informative session for you. We will connect again on next Thursday for our next webinar, which is scheduled at 1 PM EST, and it will cover the spare parts management and its application with the analytics. Thank you very much. Thank you, Johnny.
Thank you. Appreciate it.